Freddie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks, Chris. Really glad to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Definitely looking forward to this. Can you give myself and the audience a little bit of background about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So I spent my career fighting fraud and supporting scam victims. One thing that I've seen again and again is that the damage doesn't stop when the money is gone. Um, So that's a little bit about what the mission is here today. A little bit about what I do is I have worked for BB&T and now Truist Bank since 2012 as a fraud fighter, all the way from a debit card specialist, all the way now to an AML financial crimes technology specialist. I do training through a couple of organizations, white papers, program managers. I get my hands deep in the nitty gritty, as I call it, in every type of typology that you can think of. Graduated Barton College in 2009, a little small school in Wilson, North Carolina. I was a criminal justice major. Met the love of my life. Alex, today is actually our 14th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We have a son named Henry. He's 4, and he is our world. And he is the true reason I do what I do, just to make him proud.
Awesome. And how did you get into the field of fighting fraud?
So I remember when I came to college, I wanted to be a biology major. It was going to be a good career. There was going to be good money in it. And then I always joke, and I saw the syllabus the first day. It was like 50 pages long. So then we went to a career fair. It was called Welcome Back Barton Day, and every single major was out there. And there was criminal justice, and the sign said there was more to criminal justice than being law enforcement. Okay, well, let me check it out. I highly respect police officers, law enforcement. They are very underpaid and lack of resources. So that is not what I'm trying to say here. But when you are a criminologist, looking at a holistic view of, looking at the whole box, making sure that you were the missing puzzle piece as a fraud fighter, if it's being a SAR writer, if it's being a person that is talking to a vulnerable individual, being the voice of them when they can't speak, that is truly what being a fraud fighter is, going above and beyond until you can find that missing piece.
Is there a story that kind of motivates you when you feel unmotivated?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a client, she was from Tennessee, that she was a victim of something called a pig butchering scam. And if you've never heard of a pig butchering scam, it's exactly how it sounds. It's fattening a pig up, slaughtering it until there's nothing left. It's not about a farm animal. A lot of people hate that term. I hear, oh, I don't like that term. You should call it financial grooming. And I'm like, no, it is exactly what it is. And what happened is that she lost her husband, so she was a widow, and she met this guy online, um, and gave over $300,000, Chris, to this individual over a 6-month period. And what happened is that he convinced her to invest in something called Kraken Exchange. She thought it's a cryptocurrency platform. This is not bashing Kraken Exchange, because of what she was investing is what she thought was real. It was actually a fake exchange that the fraudsters have created, put the money in there, and they were giving her fake statements. And as we all know, is what a mule is. A mule is pretty much a middleman. It's a pass-through account of going from one person to another, to another, to another. And there was justice. There was, like, I believe it was like $1.2 million between multiple individuals, where this individual that was scamming people just like this client. But here's where it gets real, Chris. I remember calling her. I got an incident report from the branch. I pick up the phone and I said, "Hey, this is Freddie with Truist Bank, the Vulnerable Adults Unit. I wanted to talk to you about, X, Y, and Z of these transactions. It was ATMs, it was wires, it was money taken out from 401ks, IRAs, her life insurance policies." And she said to me, If you didn't call me today, I was going to commit suicide. My family
Wow.
doesn't talk to me. My friends don't talk to me. Sorry, I always get emotional with this because I think about, wonder if it was my grandmother that was going through. And I immediately kicked into not Freddie the fraud fighter, but Freddie the person that needs to be empathetic and talk to people that's vulnerable. I call law enforcement in our home city and I said, hey, here's the situation. I need you to go do a door knock. It's called a live and well check. And when they got there, she had urine all over her. She had feces all over her. She did not have a single light on in the house because she couldn't afford it. She didn't have any utilities, and the good news is they got her adult protective services. She got the help she needed. Um, and the caveat to it is, and the real, the feel good story is I check her name on Facebook every now and then, and looks like she's thriving. Do I think that she would not be here if I didn't talk to her that day? I don't know. But I'm so glad that I called her because a lot of times people need to realize is that those fraudsters or scammers on the other line are sometimes being trafficked. They're being forced. They're being compounds in Southeast Asia. And they're telling these individuals that are promised great jobs, if you don't make this amount of money today, I'm going to kill your family.
Yeah.
So please, when you look at both sides of the story, fraud fighters listening to this, look at the whole picture. Realize that sometimes there's victims on both sides. It's not a trafficker and a victim. It's not a suspect and a victim. Sometimes it tells a story. So what I'll say is follow the money until you get to that missing puzzle piece.
Yeah. Where the money ends up going, not who it passes through necessarily.
Yes, exactly, Chris.
And so, are there like organizations of like-minded fraud fighters that are coming together to try to change the way fraud fighters communicate and interact with victims?
Absolutely. One thing I'll say is that this is a great introduction. One thing that I helped develop, and I was the program lead, was the post-scam victimization guide through the Knoble. The Knoble is a whole bunch of financial service professionals that collaborate. It's law enforcement, it's regulators, it's non-government organizations joining forces to lead and innovate more effective ways to fight human crime. And human crime, people ask, well, what is it? It's human trafficking. It's fighting crime against individuals that are trying to traffic humans and move them. If it's labor trafficking, if it's human smuggling, human trafficking is your force, your fraud, and coercion. So the guide that we help create, it's trauma informed, it's step by step, full of practical tools as a fraud fighter's playbook. It's going to help people recover mentally and prevent further harm. Special shout out, I can't forget this, to Ally Bank for sponsoring the guide. It was just amazing for all these fraud fighters. There was over 50 fraud fighters that came together once a week to help develop the guide. There's screenshots, there's scripts, there's what to tell a victim of each individual typology of a crime. I've kind of helped guide them of what to say so you're not missing the mark. Because the worst thing that you want to do as frontline staff at a bank is just give a person a pamphlet. Hey, you're a victim of a crime, knock it off. That kills me because you are hurting the reputation of your organization if they come back and are committing fraud themselves and they're not realizing that they're being used as a mule over and over and over. So that's why I volunteer myself to actually go to security meetings of branches. Let me talk about the different types of fraud that we're seeing up here in the financial crimes unit. And I want to learn what they're saying because sometimes they're not telling us everything. So you take what they see, they're taking what we see, and we're develop a training that is role playing. And it's going really, really well, Chris.
And how has that kind of changed from the bank side from, let's say, 5 or 10 years ago? How did banks interact with fraud victims then?
A lot of it is lack of resources where you're having Um, Back then, it was just check fraud. Client gets mailed a check in the mail. They use a portion of the check before the funds return if it's ultra fictitious or if it's counterfeit. Now you're dealing with the big boys, like I say. You're dealing with faster payments. You're dealing, which is Zelle, your Venmo, your Cash App. You're then dealing with wire fraud. You're then dealing with cash in a different jurisdiction and a geographical area with withdrawals coming from a completely different
Yeah.
state, which is indicators of account takeover. It's indicators of identity theft. It's indicators of human trafficking where you have an 18-year-old female that is forced to open up an account. The account is charged off. And then when she gets her life back together, which we all hope, at we'll say 22 to 23 years old, because that's usually the age range where they're I'll say it, the pimps kind of just throw them out to the wolves. We don't need you anymore. You're a little older. We need some fresh blood, as they call it. Um, they just don't know how to deal with victims, because what's happening is that they go to try to open up an account and they realize that an account has been opened in their name without them knowing.
Mm.
They apply for a car loan, they apply for a mortgage, and their credit score is like at 300-400. Because wait, you have an account at so and so financial institution that you still owe $10,000 in credit card debt.
Oh.
You owe, your account was charged off for check fraud, and they don't realize. So there is legal resources out there and attorneys that take these cases pro bono to help these victims, and I love it. And a lot of times I will pick up the phone and call the contacts that I have and say, hey, here's a situation. This is what happened. Do you think you're able to help them? And a lot of times, I'm not going to say a lot of times, pretty much every single time, yes, send me their contact information and I'll reach out to them. And that is a true fraud fighter network. That's what the Knoble is about, is using your resources to your advantage to call and say, hey, is this check good? Is this account open? It's kind of like an inner 314A or 314B process for fraud fighters.
So 314A, 314B to listeners, if you're not in the space, what in the world is that?
It's an info sharing. So 314A comes from law enforcement. 314B is bank to bank. I think the system is flawed. I'll say it. I think we need to do better. We shouldn't have to wait 6 weeks to find out if an account is opened or if it's closed or who's on the account. Because a lot of times it's, Chris has an account at, we'll say, oh, I'm just making this up, Bank of America. And then all of a sudden his email change and his phone number
Yeah.
changes on the account. He doesn't have alert set up. He then finds out that Freddie has added himself as a secondary. And then I'm going to open up a DDA that you don't realize that I'm only the primary on. And I'm taking money from your HELOC that you have, going to transfer it to the DDA. And I'm going to write myself a check. And you don't realize it until it's too late.
Yeah. The timelines of things can be really scary.
Yes,
So what makes this guide different than ones that have already been published by other entities?
absolutely. Two things: it's actionable and it's trauma informed. This isn't just another, and I actually wrote something directly in the guide, and I'm going to read it to you. This isn't another awareness brochure, it's hands on. It gives financial institutions, fraud fighters, and advocates the scripts and tools they need. It also gives victims immediate, clear steps: what to do first, where to report, how to secure the accounts, and who to call for real help. A lot of these guides that are out there, they're just basic one pagers. This is what you need to do. And that's fine and dandy. But this is a detailed 56-page guide. It is only available to Knoble members. Go out to the knoble.com. Go out to the member center, or if you're part of a financial institution or law enforcement, sign up. You're able to get the guide after we vet you, because we want to make sure we're not handing it over to a fraudster that's not going to go on the dark web. But it's an amazing organization that I have been a part of from the very beginning.
And I assume the training and the experience that you get just kind of keeps continuing to feed back to the Knoble members, correct?
It does. It does. The webinars, the guides, the white papers, um, I think it's like third Thursday talks, and it's on a different typology. Like I think one time it was about if you're not familiar on this call, listeners, sextortion. So sextortion is a very, very hot topic. That was one of the last webinars that they did. Paul Raphael, if you haven't checked out Netflix, there's a couple of ones I recommend for romance scams, Love Con Revenge. That's about the Tindler Swindler. And then you have, I forgot the name of it, but Paul Raphael, he is an expert on sextortion. And I'll never forget one of the guest speakers. There was a conference. It was called Fraud Fight Club, and Fraud Fight Club was for fraud fighters by fraud fighters. And he spoke, and right after that, one of the senators, or I believe, or congressmen of South Carolina, they call it Gavin's Law, and he spoke about, and the room was quiet, Chris, and he talked about how he got home from a speech that night. His older son walked right by him, went out saying, "Word." He said, "I love you, son. Have a good night." And all of a sudden, he heard what sounded like a bowling ball falling from the top shelf. His son committed suicide, Chris.
Mm.
And as a parent, this hits hard, and I'll tell you why. He was on Instagram, and he got a whole bunch of messages. And if you have not looked it up, look it up very, very close, y'all listening. It was the Yahoo boys messing with him. He sent a picture to he thought was another individual, and they give the same type of script. If you don't send me money, I'm going to go ahead and expose these naked pictures that you sent to your friends and your family. And with his dad being a politically exposed person, a PEP, if you haven't realized that is, that can ruin the reputation. That is justice. That is why we do what we do as fraud fighters, to make sure individuals are protected. They now have a FinCEN advisory on sextortion that you can hashtag it in the SAR, that it is getting to the proper resources with law enforcement, but we cannot wait when something happens like that. Yeah. If you file a SAR for sextortion, if it's wire fraud activity indicative of human trafficking, which the good news is you need a $0 number to follow a SAR for human trafficking. You don't need the $5,000 for a suspect or $25,000 victim. You can call up your field office. Hey, I just filed a SAR for human trafficking. Here's the BSAID number. I think you should look at it. You can't tell them the details because of info sharing laws, but you need to get it on their radar sooner than later.
So what are some of the tools that you're giving fraud fighters as part of this guide?
Absolutely. So we're giving them resources first. We're giving them, direct links and QR codes to the National Elder Fraud Hotline, ic3.gov, reportfraud.ftc.gov, and then people that are a part of the guide, we put there in there. So we put Operation Shamrock. Mm-hmm. We put Adult Protective Services, of course. We've put I think it's like lovesaid.org, if I'm not mistaken. So that's Eileen Charlotte. She was one of the victims of the Tindler Swindler, and Cecile, she was another victim of the Tindler Swindler, and they are great advocates. And then you just have great leaders from credit unions, from law enforcement. We have people from the CIA. We have people from the FBI, U.S. Secret Service, human trafficking task forces. And then the other tools that we're giving them typologies are hot in the market, where we're giving them direct contacts to banks, so they're not having to send emails all over the place and trying to get contacts. We're giving them different types of wording to use as they're talking to these victims, because what we want to do is, Chris, is we want to flip the script on them and ask the client, because a lot of times they said, well, this is the love of my life. He would never do this for me.
Yeah.
You have to flip the script on them and say to them, well, ma'am, let me ask you this. How are you going to pay your mortgage this month? How are you going to tell your family? And a lot of times when you use that warning, it gets through to them. Remember someone telling me, oh, he's in the Nigerian army. He's an army sergeant.
Yeah.
Now, did I want to tell her, like, I hate to break it to you, ma'am, there's no American army in Nigeria? No, I just said, well, ma'am, I said, unfortunately, it appears that you have been a victim of a romance scam. It looks like you've sent, I think that it was like $60,000 within a week. I said, can you please tell me a little more or what? So, yeah, his supervisor couldn't have an account, so I had to send it to, or no, he couldn't have an account, so I had to send it to his supervisor, and then I was going to get money from an administrative assistant. Well, that administrative assistant was another victim
Yeah.
of a romance scam, and they were sending money back and forth, back and forth. And the feel good to this is that the victims both met in person because they were in the same town. Go figure. Like
Yeah.
that usually never happens. And they talked about everything that particular individual did to both of them. They did the same thing. I need the same amounts, back and forth, back and forth. They open up an account in their name. They give them the story. I always say is if you are a banker listening to this and they give you the story of, hey, I want to open up this home equity line of credit for home renovations for $25,000. That's the most common amount. And they then say, well, can we give you an official check? Because no, he needs cash. That a lot of times
Yeah.
is indicative of they are a victim of some type of scam.
Yeah. In most cases, you're not paying your contractor with cash.
No, I mean, if I'm a contractor, all right, that's amazing. But
I don't
it's
know if I want people paying me cash. No, I've got lots of
no,
cash I've got to figure out something to do with.
no, I don't want to carry that cash around.
Exactly. Um, like how has that changed? Because I know there's kind of the counterfeit scam and counter fraud space. There's really been a shift in being kind of more trauma informed and communicating with people in a different way. Is kind of are these new techniques helping to prevent as well as helping to get people to report?
Well, I think me and you both know it's going to be extremely and grossly underreported because
Yeah.
the shame. People just don't want to report it. But it's becoming a little easier to report because of these little
Yeah.
babies right here. But they're also a thorn in our sides because it is so easy for someone to go to a website that they then get redirected. There's a virus on their phone, especially Samsung devices. Apple devices are a little harder to, get into. Samsung devices are the most susceptible to viruses. They then go on. They then tell us, oh, someone remoted into my
Yeah.
computer. They said I had a virus on there. They remoted in and they put malware on there.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell them, or most banks tell them, hey, just go to Best Buy, just go to Staples and get it removed off your computer. Here's the issue with that. That malware is not going to get off your computer like that. You need to install somewhere where there's like a remote access blocker.
Yeah.
Um, if you look up Safar Care, I think it is one of our really cool people doing things in the industry. His name is Kit Boga. If you look up the Kit Boga show,
Yep.
met him at Fraud Fight Club. Actually had him on the working group, and he showed us his AI robot. I think it's like $4.99 a month that you can actually get the blockers of malware and remote desktop on your computer. And this is a shout out to Kid Boga because he is doing amazing things in the industry. He is exposing scammers. He is making sure that these call centers are being exposed for what they really are.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I think the product is Serif Secure.
That's where it is. Sorry, I
Yeah.
just couldn't. But he and John are just doing amazing things in the industry. Um, and that's probably one of the best products I've ever seen when it comes time to blocking um, remote desktop on someone's computer, because that is what's happening, Chris,
Mm-hmm.
is that they're getting it removed from just a regular Trojan malware on Staples or Best Buy, but they're not blocking the proper thing. So when
Yeah.
someone logs into their online banking and that's exposing their new accounts, that keystroke virus is still on there, and then they're being compromised again. And it's an inconvenience for clients. I mean, look, I'm 39 years old and I don't like even going into the branch
Yeah, yeah,
unless I absolutely have to. And I think the younger generation just is more technology savvy, but you have the elderly that still want that face to face. And that's who we need to protect. Um, you know, and I'll go back to the guide is that it's packed with resources. They aren't just websites that are listed in here. And the main thing here is that they're lifelines. They're lifelines to helping people and connecting victims to advocates who will walk them through recovery. Now, I'll say this. Are you going to get your money back? There is a slim chance,
yeah.
but mentally you are going to recover from this. There's help, there's resources. Talk to people, don't hold it in. Fraud fighters are here to help you fight these criminals.
Yeah, I think it's really important to reemphasize the likelihood of getting money back is extremely low.
Yes.
And I had been talking with Kit Boga, and that is kind of the second crime that happens is the same group of people who stole the money then come back and say, I can help you get your money back. We've got this special way of working with law enforcement and the banks and
Oh,
the
it's brutal.
cryptocurrency exchanges, and we'll guarantee you just need to pay this fee and we'll get everything back. Yeah, it's
And
just that re-victimization.
unfortunately, yep. And unfortunately, people, I'm not going to say they're falling for it, but sometimes their blinders go on when they are a victim of fraud. They just want help. They want to get their money back. And then there's people out there that are taking advantage of the advantaged.
Yeah, it's people are desperate and they're looking for hope, and someone is fictitiously offering hope and a solution to their problems. It's human nature. We're looking for you know someone that can help us, and here's this great person who says, I know exactly what you're going through. I know it's horrible, and I know it's they've listened to the playbook.
Yep.
They say all the right things, and it's just another con, unfortunately.
It is. It is. And I'll give you an example. I was on the ball field the other day with my son, and I get a text message like, hey, this is so and so. I got your number from a good contact with me at Truist. They said that you fight fraud. Well, one, it made me feel good because, you know, I'm a trusted contact. And secondly, she goes, look, I called the number on the back of my card. I kept getting rerouted to an individual overseas. I just want to make sure it's legitimate. And a lot of times, yes, banks are going to use third parties to talk to these individuals. And but knowing what I know, I told her, I was like, okay, so what happened? My mom gave the social security number, they gave the user ID and password, they allowed to remote into the computer. I was like, okay, first things first, is your online banking blocked right now? That says yes, they locked it down, no one can get into it. Perfect. I says, okay. Next thing you're gonna do is what happened. She goes, there is 4 transactions on the account that are pending right now. They're all ATM withdrawals. I was like, okay, perfect. I said, you can't file a claim right now, but once they post, we're going to file a claim. FDIC rules will get you that money back. It says next, we're going to go ahead and call Equifax right now and put a credit freeze on your credit report. The good news is it's going to take care of all 3: Equifax,
Yeah.
Experian, TransUnion. I says, and the best part about this is that since you're a victim of identity theft here, we're gonna go ahead and get you a police report filed, and then you get free um, what is it, ID guard for like 2 years
Mm-hmm.
on the bank's dime. And I think that just eases people because money moves so fast
Yeah.
and fraudsters are 5 steps ahead of us, Chris, that sometimes it's just hard to keep up. And that's what this guy does. It's trying to prevent the re-victimization of people being a victim of a scam. Now that type of fraud, the first party, I mean, it's hard to prevent because you're gonna have your debit card compromise. That's why I tell people use your credit cards, you know, as much as you can at gas pumps, you know. If you have Visa or anybody else listening in with the exchange rates, I'm sorry, but from a safety issue,
Yeah.
Let it be the bank's money and not your money, and hopefully you're a little more protective. Use Apple Pay or use contactless payments. That way you are just have that little extra layer of security. I have fraud alerts set up for 1 penny for
Yeah.
everything I spend, because look, I've been doing this for almost 14 years. I'm very anal when it comes time to any type of money. I was like, wait a minute, what is this? 1 penny, and then boom, $5, and then $50, and sometimes it's just how it's like the gas stations. They have $175 hold fee, and then your gas goes on there. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's the same way I am. When I travel, I use a very specific card for when I travel, and it's the
yes,
only thing I use when I'm in. Even if I'm locally, I've never use a debit card. Always use a credit card because I know at least there is a time delay between I've got a certain amount of time before it impacts me financially directly. If it's a debit card and they're yanking straight out of my bank account, well, I believe the bank will make it right, but it's going to take time to be made right. And I've got bills to pay. I've got a mortgage and carpet. We've all got those regular bills, and I don't want to risk the interruption of those bills with well, we'll take care of this. It'll take 3 to 5 days. Well, my
yep,
rent's due tomorrow. I can't I can't wait 3 to 5 days.
of course.
And are you is there as part of this, are there best practices for banks in how they how they deal with transactions that start to look suspicious, or is that kind of within banks, or like they're doing it themselves? This is really for the fraud fighters.
It's mostly for the fraud fighters, Chris, but I always say for banks is that whenever you build your system-based fraud rules, you're going to have to change your
Yeah.
thresholds more often than you want. And I know it's costly because every time you change a rule, you have to pay money for it. But if you have stuff alerting for $50 and not $500, or not both, or where you have, hotels mixed with airlines and then are mixed with wire transfers to a high risk jurisdiction, and then you're adding in your Airbnbs, your Verbos, your Sally Beauty Supply. Well, to the naked eye, like that's just a college kid or a business person traveling. I'm like, but from a fraud fighter perspective, that's activity of human trafficking. That's activity of scam. That's where, I always tell people, if a client, always look at their pending transaction as well, because their pending transactions are not going to show up unposted. And what I mean by that is if you see 500, 100, 500, 100, and it's places like Winn-Dixie, Publix,
Yeah.
Food Lion, Walgreens, CVS, that activity is indicative that they're buying gift cards. And let me go into this another story for you. It always grinds my gears when I tell this. I was in a pharmacy and I overheard somebody talking on the phone to an individual like, all right, buy a green dot. Is this the right card, or do this? And I told her, I said, ma'am, I think you're a victim of some type of scam. I says, do you mind telling me like who you're on the phone with? Oh, it's my boyfriend. And the manager overheard me talking. You know what he came up to me and told me?
Don't interfere.
He said, mind your business.
Yeah.
Well, what did Freddie do? I called corporate and I said, look, I says, your managers are more, what's the best word here? You guys are more concerned about making money than someone being a victim of a scam.
Yeah.
Well, about 2 weeks later, I had to go in there to pick up my medication. Here's the win. They had a nice little beware of scams poster right above those gift cards. So it's just, the wording is, if you see something, say something.
Yeah.
Sometimes it hurts to talk about, like, for an example, I always hear, well, did you call the police when this happened? No, I didn't want to be bothered. I figured someone else is. We can't have that mentality, Chris, in the fraud fighting world. You have to speak up and say something, because that either could save a life in the human trafficking world, that could prevent more dollars going through the dirty money system of money laundering, or it could just help that little old lady deplete her Social Security checks that she gets in each month, which is $2,000, and that's all she has for the month.
Yeah, I mean, and on the law enforcement side, if they don't know the scope of the problem, it's hard for them to apply the right resources.
100%. And don't
If
ever have the mentality of, well, I'm not going to file this because I don't think it's fraud. If you have suspicion of activity that appears to be fraud, that's why it's called a suspicious activity report. File it just in case, as long as it meets the dollar threshold, because you just never know. And I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
no,
So,
no, no, it's yeah, it's okay. So are there any kind of, as we start to wrap up here, any kind of key things that uh, potential so someone who thinks that they might be a victim of a scam, what should they be doing?
absolutely. So, first steps that victims should take is stop all contact with the scammers. Like absolutely everything, email, telephone, phone numbers. You're most likely going to have phone numbers from unknown numbers that are going to threaten you. Just block the phone numbers, let them leave you a voice message, and then we're going to come report that to law enforcement and hopefully get the IP addresses or the phone numbers and hopefully get them charged with communicating threats. Secure all your accounts, change your passwords, get multi-factor or secondary factor authentication where you actually have to type in your password. Then they send you a text message, and then you can log in. Do all your device scans, like I said. Kitboga's product is amazing. There's any type of system that you want to get it. I highly recommend that. Here's the most important thing: do not delete anything. Document, document, document your losses and all communications with the individual, because that will help you
Yeah.
down the road if there is a chance of recovery. And I'm going to say this: if there is a chance of recovery of getting your money back, they are going to want to see the communication. Report it to your bank. IC3.gov is a website through the FBI. They track losses, it's data. You report it to them. If it is a internet crime, if it's cryptocurrency, they want to see it. And go as far as, if you're a fraud fighter on this call and you work in the vulnerable adult space, if somebody is over the age of 60 years old, they are considered a vulnerable adult. So they do qualify for adult protective services. Um, social workers, they are a little understaffed, but they do the best they can. If it's urgent, pick up the phone and call them.
Yeah.
And here's the most important thing: seek emotional support. Please don't commit suicide. Please don't go as far as ending your life, because there's always somebody to talk to. If it's, a friend, a pastor, a church, seriously, email and call me. I'll talk to you for 2 hours if I have to, because I am a person first. I am a fraud fighter second, but I am a godly man third, and I want to make sure that you get the help you need.
Yeah. Has there been I guess the question is, what kind of support groups are there out there for scam and fraud victims?
There's the National Elder Fraud Line, like I said. There's mostly your local. I'm trying to think, local church groups that they have monthly. There is there's Operation Shamrock. If you are a victim of a cryptocurrency scam, highly recommend that you do reach out to them. There's your local law enforcement. Um, I have a couple of good fraud friends um, that do a lot of talking to victims that have been victims of like major scams. I'm talking like 100 to $200,000. But what I'll say is that no dollar amount is too small to get help. If you've lost money and you're coping with emotional um, stress, just pick up the phone and call somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. Talking about it is by far the most important thing. If the person you're talking to isn't supportive, go talk to somebody else.
Absolutely.
Don't
Um,
let that deter you from working through it. I know that's all the victims that I've talked to have said that talking to other people about it and the things they're feeling, the things they're going through, the lack of trust that they feel in themselves, and their ability to evaluate people, are all things that they had to work through. And it's been difficult, but there's resources and there's people who want to help.
There is. I do have a one more thing to
Mm-hmm.
say is that I was asked a question a couple of weeks ago, and it was, what is the biggest mistake people make after realizing they've been scammed?
Mm.
And this is what I'll say. You stay silent. You have shame, you have fear of keep from telling anyone. And this is what I'll say is that silence is what scammers want. So please, 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 the faster you speak up, the more options you will have to recover and protect yourself. Um, and that truly resonated with me, Chris, because, you know, when you have a family member, I remember my grandmother calling me one day. She goes, Freddie, uh, the IRS just called me. I says, okay, well, what do they say? They said I owe $10,000 in back taxes, and they wanted me to give. So I said, Grandma, I said, let me stop you real quick. Did you give them any information? She goes, no, I thought they were a joke. I mean, she's the true Italian grandmother. She knows what I do for a living, and she calls me for everything. I got this text message. What is this? It's like, well, read it to me. She goes, it says my Coinbase account has been
Yeah.
compromised. It says, I says, well, Grandma, do you have Coinbase? She goes, no. I said, did someone open an account? I says, well, what's the phone number on the top there? And she's like, okay, it's a plus sign 63, blah, blah, blah. So, well, that's something called WhatsApp. It's from an app. And they are, a lot of times, Grandma, victims of human trafficking, that they're sending these text messages out. And that's where it starts. So when you get these text messages of hello, or I'm sorry, what time is our dinner date tonight?
Yeah.
And people are saying, well, wrong number. And then they'll get hit back with this beautiful Asian woman. I'm so sorry to bother you. I'm telling you, like, I've gotten text messages from people, and this person's name can be Susan or it can be named Jessica, but it's always the same picture
Yeah.
of a beautiful Asian woman. And they try to talk to you. And sometimes that loneliness, people talk to them back, and that's
Yeah.
where those pig butchering scams talk. So I'll tell everybody on this call, do not respond to those text messages. Don't give the scammers the energy that they want back.
Yeah.
We stop them in our tracks, and hopefully they move on to somebody else, and we're not at risk anymore.
That's good. Freddie, if people want to find out where to get the guide, where can they find the guide? What's the process that they have to go through to get it?
Yep. So they would go to the Knoble.com. On the top right, you're going to see something called the Member Center. You're going to need to go ahead and fill out the information. You're going to be vetted by an individual there, just to make sure that we are not passing this out to a fraudster that's going to put it on the dark web. Um, and then it is, I'll say this, it is a free service. It is not a paid subscription. So if you are a financial institution or law enforcement or just a victim of a crime, sign up. We'll be glad to have you.
Awesome. And if people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Go to LinkedIn, type in Freddie Massimi the third. I'm the only one on there. And if Chris, whenever you do post this podcast, if you want to do a link to my LinkedIn, I would love for people to follow me. Because being a fraud fighter, we're never done talking. We're always going to learn from individuals. Um, you know, I am a financial crimes technology specialist first, but then there's all these other
Yeah.
organizations. So what I'll say is, dealing with the Knoble, dealing with the company called the Anti-Human Trafficking Intelligence Initiative. It's a dark watch company. They do a lot of threat analytics with human trafficking. We're concentrating on building a fraud network. We're also doing a lot with the hospitality industry, making sure that they're not checking in bad actors. It's really, really good. Some work with Charm Security. I got a lot going on, but I'll tell you, I truly enjoy it because I want to make a difference in this world. I want to make sure that people are protected, that they're not being taken advantage of. And I'll be glad to talk to anybody.
Awesome. And all of the resources that we talked about, we link to them in the show notes. So for listeners, you don't have to be scrambling trying to write things down while you're listening or driving. It's all up on the website. Freddie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris, for having me. Glad to be here.
You're welcome.